What's up, everybody? Tim Anderson here, aka Renville, the bearded dwarven princess, and it is time to review episode 5 of Rings of Power. I gotta shake my head at this one. As always, if you are a returning visitor, I do two reviews. One is the lore review. What is this like from a lore perspective? Did it follow Tolkien's established lore, or is it way off base? And number two is, what is the generic fantasy, sort of general fantasy feel of the show? Is it a good show? Does it have a good writing? How are the visual storytelling elements? How are the VFX? How are the plot points? So at the end of the episode, there are those two reviews, one of which is a biased review based on my existence as a Tolkien fan, and the other is the unbiased review of just looking at it through the lens of general storytelling and can it stand on its own. So if you're only interested in the review stuff, you can go to the end, but for the rest of it, stick around because we got a lot to talk about. But before we get going, two things. One, as always, spoiler alert. Everything I'm talking about here from here on forward is full of spoiler territory, so walk away if you don't want anything spoiled. Number two is that this channel is wholly supported by people like this. I get to do this full time because all of these people support the channel. You too can support. It's super simple. When you're watching a premiere like this one, there's a super chat button down there in the chat window that you can click, and it allows you to contribute whatever it is that you want to contribute, whether it's $2, $10, $5, whatever. After the fact, when the video has been uploaded, you can do a super thanks down there. Both are great ways. There's also a Patreon page and some other stuff which we're going to talk about at the end of the episode. But for now, let's dive in to the review. So first and foremost, we get started here. I'm enjoying the performances at the beginning of this episode as Nori is trying to convince the stranger, as he's now starting to understand the language as they migrate. She's trying to convince him that he's good, that he's here to help, while he's questioning, am I bad because I killed the Fireflags? And he's questioning his existence. Am I good? And this feels good. Like it actually starts off where for the first time ever, I'm actually watching Nori's character and going, yeah, this is a good dialogue section. Like I'm actually not hating your character for the first time in a long time. Um, it's a good sequence, and where we go from here is just some amazing visuals, and this is the first time in the entirety of the show where I have felt some genuine like warmth towards it. I'm like, this feels good. It doesn't feel forced. It doesn't feel contrived. This sequence where the family is migrating and we're seeing all of these amazing visuals of New Zealand while while Nori's friend, is it Poppy, I think, is singing this traveling song, and we're seeing all of these visuals of them going through different landscapes, the trials and tribulations of the road, and how they are bonding with the big man, the stranger. It felt very, very, very good. All these different landscapes, the storms, the tribulations, the bond of family. Really good. And the song itself, with the lyrics towards the end, where it says, "No matter the sorrow, no matter the cost, not all who wander or wander are lost." It felt good. And that's something I haven't actually felt in the show to date. So, giving credit where credit is due, this was good storytelling right here. Good television showmanship. I felt really genuine and didn't feel forced. And then we're straight back to something that feels absolutely forced, which is we're back to the pit where the stranger fell. There's strange cultists who are here using powers over the pit where he fell, looking around creepily. And obviously, we're meant to feel bad about this, but we don't know why. Then there's Ador staring off into the sun. Adar, sorry, asking the orc to burn his flesh and saying, "I wish you could feel the sun like I did, but soon it will all be gone. All will be dark, and while I will miss the light, soon we will all feel the comfort. Summon the legions." Here's the worst part of this episode, or one of the worst parts. Bronwyn addressing the people, giving a warrior's speech. "If you choose to stand with me and fight, who will stand with me? You're the healer. You're the village healer. Like, what gives you the authority, and where did you suddenly go from being the village healer to the village leader to like the warrior queen who's going to lead all these people?" This is where I kind of mean to understand now why this actress was out there in the spotlight making all these speeches about how go women, because this is the first time I have been fighting against people who claim that this show has woke politics in it, that it's forcing a woke agenda. And I still don't think that this is a forced woke agenda, but this is the first time I have felt like as much as I dislike Galadriel's character, I dislike her for other reasons. I am now beginning to dislike Bronwyn's character because to date I have felt like she was just a background secondary character that didn't really fit in, and I was like, did she just get thrown in there to be like a romantic interest for Arondir? And now I see what they're doing with her character, and I'm like, I it feels forced and contrived, and all of that genuine feeling that you gave me in this opening sequence with the Harfoots bonding with the stranger and the really cool song, you've now thrown that into the wind because you've done this sequence of like Bronwyn becoming Braveheart, like leading her people in a charge against the cruel orcs. Stand and fight, and it's like, come on. If anyone should be giving this speech, it should be Arondir. Um, the end of this is the old man who we all knew was corrupt going, it's going to be better to submit. Let's go. All of you who want to live, follow me. And he's taking his people to the orcs. Um, Scene sequence here, changing to the Numenorian fleet preparing. Great visuals as always. Elendil is a badass. I really love his character. There's a sequence between him and his son where he doesn't want to let his son come on the expedition. There's some really good writing here. He's looking around, showing all these other men, saying, these men have put in their time and they've dedicated their lives to Numenor. What have you ever done? Every single thing you've ever put your mind to, you've abandoned. You've abandoned these 3, 4, 5 different things. Why should it be any different now? No, I'm not going to trust you. You had your chance. You squandered it. And then we flash back to Halburn at the Forge. Sorry. Halburn at the Forge, and oh my god, the red herrings are strong with this one. Sauron, they scream. Master Forger, they want you to say. It's. Ugh. He's summoned by Pharazôn, the Queen, and Galadriel to give an account of where the orcs were seen in the realms, and he suddenly can point to a map and say, well, the orcs were moving here, and they must have went to Ost Irith here. But how could he possibly know that unless he's Sauron? Just too many red herrings here. And then we find out here as we get going here that turns out that Galadriel lied to the queen. Oh, shocker there. Galadriel did something bad. Halbrand has no desire to return to Middle-earth and unite his people. He's content to remain in Numenor and enjoy this paradise in which he has found himself. Which we come, again, Galadriel is a manipulative bitch. Really hate her character. There's a confrontation between the two of them. He feels used. She feel like she's won because they're sending 5 ships and I got what I wanted. I'm about to put a crown on your head and you should be grateful. And he yanks the necklace off and says, find another head to crown. And for the first freaking time, I find myself actually rooting for him. Please don't be Sauron. Please let this guy just be a dude who wants to be a dude, living a dude's life, leaving the stain of his family behind him. Please. Attack sequence in the woods, the Harfoots on the run, there's wargs, and the big man comes to save him, uses his powers, and then the powers appear to have some sort of corrupting effect because it burns his arm and puts like this dark creepiness over him, and it obviously pains him. Um, Interesting. Don't know where they're going with this. There's a sequence here with Galadriel teaching sword fighting to the young men of Numenor. I fast forwarded this sequence. Thumbs down. Very boring. No plot movement here at all. Just to show that she's a warrior princess. Whatever. Um, the people are wanting to know why Pharazôn is not against the queen, because he's his whole life, he helped depose the previous king for being pro-elf, and they're like, why are you going along with her when she is helping this elf? Including his own son, who confronts him about it. And Pharazôn's like, it's folly to kick against the current. The trick is to know when the current might turn. And this is another section of good writing and good acting, because we get to the grain of it here. He says, when this is all over, the elves will be taking orders from us. And he reveals to his son the truth of it. This is the time. We're going to go give the men of Middle-earth the king that they want, and that king is going to be grateful to us. He's going to want to give us tribute. They're going to be generous to us. They're going to want to pay us back for uniting them and helping against the orc, and this is going to make us become more powerful. Really cool stuff here. Um, there's this sequence here where the stranger is healing his hand in water with like frost magic, and it looks really nasty and bad. And he's chanting strange things, and the frost comes up over his hand, and Nori's hand gets stuck, and she gets blown back by this explosion. And for the first time, she actually fears the ban, and now he's feeling concerned because he hurt her by accident. Now he's probably questioning, am I really bad? I don't know. Um, The sequence felt a little forced, other than just to show that he's got a way to heal himself from whatever it is that's going on with when he uses his other powers. But I don't understand why sometimes when he uses his power, it causes his body harm, but other times it doesn't because he can heal himself and it doesn't harm him. So I don't quite going what's going off here. But when he's looking at this and he's looking at how his hand is healed, the music gets really ominous, and it's like, please stop with the red herring bullshit because it's starting to get a little annoying. Um, the dinner with Gilgalad feels interesting. Um, there's a confrontation because we definitely now find out that Gilgalad has, why are your people digging so deep and so furiously right now? And Durin asks, well, why are you so busy in Linden? Typically takes your people a week just to take a shit, and it cuts away, which I thought was quite amusing. He spins this tale of how the table they're eating at is from a sacred site. Gilgalad's going to send it back. Um, uh, it's some interesting, fun storytelling if it doesn't move the plot forward. But then we get this sequence of like Gilgalad accusing Elrond of lying, and it's Elrond is like, "You're the one who's lying to me. You were looking for something and you used me." And we get to the core of what it is that Gilgalad is really after. They create this mythology here that there was this great battle fought between, and if this actually happened, please someone drop this in the comments below because I've never heard of this. Apparently there was some battle between an elf and a Balrog over a Silmaril, and during the fight the essence of all of that magic got focused down through a tree into the roots of the mountains, and that power is what caused and created this Mithril ore, which apparently Gilgalad knows all about, and he wants to know if the dwarves have found it. So are they really creating their own origin story for the Mithril? I mean, why couldn't they just leave it alone as a mysterious ore? Um, yeah, we'll get back to this in a little bit. Um, so during this sequence, Gilgalad shows Elrond the coming doom and the decay in the tree, and the fact that their decline is quickening because the light of the Eldar is fading. And he's really just, did the dwarves find the ore? Betray your trust for your people, and Elrond's, I swore an oath, etc. Um, it uh, back to the Numenor. Pharaoh's son is trying to burn one of the boats, finds Isildur stowing away. This felt like a forced sequence. Um, etc. I don't know. It's just some of the stuff feels so forced. Pharaoh's uses this as an excuse that we should wait. Maybe we should lead the people to it, not try to force them to it. And now two of the boats are burned. And Galadriel has a temper tantrum here. We still need to go. The queen's asking about Halbrand. How does he really feel? And this is going to lead to a confrontation that comes back in a little bit. The next sequence here is the one that really bothered me, though. It's Elrond talking to Celebrimbor and saying, "What do you think about this Mithril?" And he's in confidence asking Celebrimbor because he doesn't want to tell the king. And we find out that Celebrimbor tells him, "Oh, the king already knew about this. I've been studying Mithril in secret for months. We just needed the dwarves to admit that they had found it. But I've been studying it for months." And it turns out nothing can harm it, and if we can gather mass quantities of it, we can bathe the elves in the light of the Valar once again, and it can save our people from dying. And this is where they really just lost the plot with me. I just I need to save this for the end. let me move on here. Galadriel's begging for forgiveness from Halbrand. Stop fighting me. You need to convince the queen. And he's like, you're wrong. You don't know what I did before I ended up on that raft. You don't know how I survived, how we all survived. And when these people discover it, they're going to cast me out, and so will you. And she gives the line about, sometimes to find the light, we must first touch the darkness. What do you know of darkness? He asks her. And he then accuses her of vengeance. And the least you can do is tell me why. And she finally admits that the darkness in her won't allow her to stop, and that the reason the king and Elrond turned against her is because they can no longer discern the difference between her and Sauron. And I'm sitting here going, if she knows this, if she has the self-realization that she has this within her, and she realizes that this is her reality, why doesn't she just stop? Like, she's obviously having this self-realization that I am becoming Sauron because of this quest for vengeance. I'm becoming this evil creature. Then just stop. Why is this whole I can't stop? It's just him and him and him and him and him. I don't know. Um, there's a little bit of bond building here between Theo and Arondir. Theo shows the blade to him, and then Arondir realizes the symbol on the blade is also on the watchtower. You know, a sword and stone. Our enemy knows your son has this, Bronwyn. She despairs, wants to give up. Um, I just don't. I don't get into this. There is a shining light towards the end of this episode when Durin and Elrond are having this, speech. They're watching these elves carry the table off into the forest. It turns out that Durin made up the whole story about that stone being sacred. He wanted to poke at Gilgalad and got a free table for Disa. And Elrond and him have this genuine conversation. And Elrond admits to him that all of the things that Celebrimbor told him. And Durin's like, you know what? That's fine. If the fate of the elves rests in my hands, I'll help you. But first we have to convince my father, so they're off on their way back. And you know, at the very end of this episode, Halbrand apparently has changed his mind. He's mounted on a horse. He's armored up. We see Isildur as one of the guards. He managed to find his way in, makes up with his friends, and then his father hands him a shovel and sweep and like you're going to be a stable sweeper, but at least you're here with us. It is what it is. So let's talk about the lore review for the show here. Let me get a sip of coffee here because I need a moment. So I have previously been very generous to the point where some people have accused me of becoming a shill for Amazon, and I'm like, get off it. You guys are fuckwits if you think that. Um, I give genuine reviews here on my channel based on my opinions, and I have generally given these episodes a 5 or 6 rating for lore because they do have tidbits of lore. Um, Even though they are breaking a lot of things. The whole thing with the Mithril and how Mithril is the only thing that can save the elves. And if we don't get our hands on the Mithril, the elves are going to die because it contains the light of the Valar. And that's what makes Mithril so special. And we got to have it. We're going to have to get it in mass quantities because if we don't, the elves are going to die. So on and so forth. This I have not read all of the histories of Middle Earth and everything else, but I have read, The Lord of the Rings, The Silmarillion many years ago, and I have no recollection of this being actually in any of the books that I've read. Maybe it's been 20 years, and I just don't know any better. Matter of fact, I'm going to Google this here. I'm going to see what the internet says about Mithril. And I'm going to go straight to Tolkien Gateway because that seems like a good one. Mithril was a precious metal highly prized for its strength, lightweight, and malleability. The elves called it Mithril, but the dwarves had their own secret name for it. It was known as Moria silver or true silver. The history says it was found in the Misty Mountains, also found in the island of Numenor and probably in Aman as well. I'm skimming this. Nenya was created with Mithril. The Noldor had an alloy called Ithildin. Dun, 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 dun. I don't see anything in here that says from the existing lore. So it appears to me that they are taking their own, like they're really creating an origin story for Mithril. And I'm so against this. And I'm really genuinely curious now why the Tolkien estate, like one of the mandates that I understand was that they weren't supposed to do anything that contradicted Tolkien's lore. And now I'm questioning the Tolkien estate even more than I have before because I look at this and I'm not a book purist per se, but I'm really stuck on this now because it has taken away the what in my mind was the mythical nature of the elves, right? The otherworldly, ethereal aspect of the elves, and we've boiled it down to we can't survive without the light of the Valar, And if Mithril is the last light of Valar on this planet, now that the tree is fading, hurry up, we have to get this precious metal because if we don't, we're all going to die. That like changes the entire narrative for the entire elven peoples if this has become their narrative. Like, we have to get this precious metal because we're so desperate to survive, we're going to do anything we can to bathe in the light of the trees once again. For this purpose alone, for this episode, there's a part of me that wants to give this like a 1-star review from a lore perspective because it feels like it breaks everything. I don't know where they're going with this, so it's hard for me to be able to predict how this is going to play out over the course of the long-term, storytelling of the show. But even though my gut reaction wants to give it a 1 out of 10, there are other aspects where they're tying in here because we get the story about Elrond's father sailing off and other things. So but I am gonna it's a 3 out of 10. Like this is the lowest rating I've had of the series yet from a lore perspective because of that one thing. It just breaks all these other things. And then there wasn't really a lot else going on in the show that had to do with lore of the books. This was an episode that felt fairly invented across multiple areas. There wasn't really anything that tied into the lore of Middle Earth or the existing storylines. So this was a very lore light episode. Now, let's look at the unbiased review, which is the next component. Um, some good storytelling elements going on here. That sequence at the beginning, the speech between Elendil and his son, the scene between Gilgalad and Durin when they're having dinner, and the verbal sparring between them. There was actually, for the first time ever, I caught like some actual more than like snippets. There was actually several good segments in here. The good writing, good acting, good music. The song at the migration sequence in the beginning, the lyrics of that song, excuse me, all of that felt very good. And from an unbiased perspective, with some good visual storytelling going on here, and some foreshadowing of the old man perhaps being, oh, he's got a dark power in him, but is he going to use that for good? Like, we're building up to something here, and we're past the midway point here. I think there's 8 episodes, right? So we're past that midway point. So we're on the downward slope now. I got to give this one another 7 out of 10 from an unbiased fantasy television show perspective because it had a lot of these hallmarks that make good television. Um, some good writing, some good sequencing, some good pacing. So the unbiased review for me is like last week, a 7 out of 10. Um, but again, I have to be able to, and I'm able to separate that. I could take the lore component out of it and say, and hopefully you can as well. I know not everyone can. It's fine. It's up to you. Everybody has different agendas when they watch this show. I'm just doing it from a purely entertainment perspective. So, we're at the end. If you liked this, like, subscribe, hit the bell icon. Like all of these people who keep the lights on and allow me to pursue YouTube full time as a content creator, you too can support. If you're watching this as a premiere, you can do a super chat. If you're watching this after the fact, you can do a super thanks down there. Tune into a live stream. Anytime you see me live, you can do more super chats there. And you can also join as a member of the Adventurers Guild down there for less than $3 a month. It's $2.99. You can become a supporter here. Just consider this like a Netflix subscription because I produce a lot of content that people consume and enjoy. And if you want to know more about what I'm building with my wife and my brother, that's the world map behind me. It's the world of the Weave and the Void. It's a fantasy setting, 5th edition tabletop, a point and click adventure game, and a book series, all being produced through our Patreon page. Check that out, patreon.com/wandering hermits. I look forward to hearing everyone's thoughts on the episode in the comments below. And of course, don't forget, every Monday morning at 11 a.m. Central, we have the Mondays in Middle Earth show as we continue to read through uh, The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings, and The Silmarillion to better understand what's going on with this show and beyond. So hopefully we'll see you there in one of those episodes as well. Till next time, stay safe, everybody. Happy watching.